NandaAcademies. Today's video you will see a very interesting application development which is going to be useful for all our future applications. That's nothing but how to use data grid, how to program it, or how to incorporate this data grid in our forms, and also the drop down component. So these are the two very important components which will be useful, of course, for all our applications, not only ours, even in general any web application. You will see that these two components are widely used. Unfortunately, many people get confused in adding this data grid and how to bring in the data and display in the data grid. So let us just walk through the complete development here, so you will understand very easily within again minutes. And remember, this can be published on cloud with full stack development, Python on either side, client and the server side. As usual, people who have not watched my earlier videos, lecture 1, 2, 3, I request to go through these videos, at least the lecture 1, because you will have the fundamentals, right? Let's now start building this application. So let me just come to the home page of AnvilWorks. Here I'll just select the new blank app, and let me select the classic I think material design. So we'll use the same kind of so it's getting loaded. If I'm not getting, no, this is not the theme which I want, so I'll just go back and select classic. Under classic, card based layout. I think this is what we have seen. So let me just take the same thing without confusing the viewers. Yeah, so this is, let me just drop a title here. So I can just I've just dropped a title, give a name to this. So data grid demo, and let me just add a link, at least for the sake of our application. So let me just give the name as home, and double click on this. It's very easy. Open form, home, form 1 here, so I can just rename this and call it as home. Now go back to design, view, and you will see here I should give home. Yeah, now it's done. What we are going to do is we have to drop now the drop down menu here, and also a button. I'll tell you why these things are required, because once if I put this, then it's easy for the viewers to understand. So now I'll just give the background color so that and the foreground is white quickly, and the alignment I'll make it full, so this is my drop. So, okay, now let me just tell you what exactly we are going to do. It's very simple. That let's assume that we have a cart, something like e-commerce application. Now given a cart, of course you will have so many products. So our MySQL database table will consist of certain columns. So I'll show you how to design this table. What are the columns or the attributes? So as far as the application is concerned, or the demo is concerned, given a cart number, what are the products that cart contains? That has to be displayed in the data grid. So I'll just drop it. That means I'll just select the cart ID from this drop down and then click on this go button. Then I'll be able to get all the products which are there in that particular cart, retrieve that from the database table through Visual Studio Python code, that is server code, and display that here in the data grid. So we can get a feel of designing both or understanding how the drop down and the data grid works in Anvil. So I'll just add a data grid. This is the data grid, you can see here. Right, so I have the data grid here. It looks bigger font, so I can just change the body here using this. So here font size is actually 24, so I'll just make it 14. So we can edit actually the HTML file. I'll come to this later, not in this video of course. Now you can see that the font size has been reduced because globally for all the components which you're going to use in this application. So I think I'll just give a name also to this, that is cart demo. Right, so once you drop this data grid into this panel, which is my container, and by default you will get 3 columns. So this is my data grid. You can see self.datagrid1. I can add any number of data grids. Now before we actually program this in the code section, we need to give the title or the header. So that appears on the right hand side here again. So the title is column 1. So here I'll say cart number, the one which I'm going to display here. In column 2, I may say product name of the product, and maybe the third column will be the price. Okay, and when I come to this drop down, I can just fill the values here. Here it's in the design time itself. So when you want to add, or in the program time also, you can add the values. But here what happens, for our demonstration here, we will just use only the 5 cards, and we can add these values in the design time itself. Each item should be in a separate line. And also you can add a placeholder. That means select cart number, so that the user will know that what exactly has to do with this drop down. And you get to click on this, double click on this go button, and it will retrieve the products in this particular cart and then display it in this data grid. Now we will come to data grid part. So we have already typed the column headers, but how to design this rows, individual rows. So in Anvil, the data grid actually consists of what is known as, if I click this, you can see here it's a repeating panel. So a data grid embeds a repeating panel. So every data grid, when you create, automatically it also embeds what is known as a repeating panel. Now what is the meaning of repeating panel? Repeating panel simply means that you need to program, you need to actually specify that each row, what are the various things it's going to hold, right? And once you mention that for one particular row, it's going to repeat for all the rows, irrespective of the number of rows which are going to be there. When you run this application, in the data grid. So it should know, because the structure remains same for all rows and for each column. So you don't need to actually program for each row. It's going to repeat. That's why it's called repeating panel. Now how to do that? You can double click on this repeating panel, or you can see here row template. There is one module which is created already. You can click on this. Automatically you'll get something like this, and you have to drop the component which is required for display of certain data. So in column 1, I just say, because I'm not going to enter anything, it's only display. If you want to enter something here, you can drop any component, maybe text box, text area, drop down, okay, anything, icon, anything you can drop. Okay, so now another important aspect is that you have to actually bind this with the data which you are going to retrieve from the database. So you can see here data binding, where I can simply say cart number. Now this variable has to match with what data we are going to bring in from the database. I'll tell you that when we go to the Visual Studio. Similarly, I can just drop another label here for product name. So we don't need to write anything here. So this is product name. DUCT, correct, product name. Similarly, the cost or the price. So I'll simply say price. So basically, data binding means that you are trying to bind the variable, the item value which you are going to get displayed here when you bring in some data from the function which you are going to call, that is Python function which you are going to call, that will bring in a result set object. That means it consists of rows and columns. Any number of rows may be there, but we are going to display these values for every row here. So it will repeat for all these rows. You can double click on this, it will go back. Now what we need to do is double click on this, so that now before we do this, let me just tell you one more thing. Now whenever we select any value from this drop down, that value is important, which need to be sent for bringing in the product items. Okay, so double click on this, you will get another method wherein when I click on that and select something, that value is going to be used. So I'll just use cart number here. As my initialization, then self dot, you can see cart number is equal to self dot the drop down. Okay, drop down 1 dot selected value. So selected value will actually get me, suppose if I select 2, this 2 will be obtained and assigned to this cart number. So this I can use, this variable I can use and send it to my Python function in Visual Studio Code. So here when I click on button 1, that means I should get the data from my Python code from Visual Studio and assign it to, remember here, repeating panel, because all the rows should get occupied. So repeating panel dot, it has items. Okay, now here I have to call the function, that is anvil server. Oh, I forgot to import. So you have to import anvil server. Then I will be able to get this. Now you can see anvil server dot call. There is a method called call the function. So which function? That is the Python function which is going to run in the server side. So get cart data, I'll say get cart data and comma this parameter, this cart number, I have to send it. What is the cart number? Self dot cart number. So if I send this for that particular cart, it will retrieve all the data and display it in this repeating panel. Now that's the idea. So now we have to actually design this get cart data function in Python. Now before that, let me just show the database table, that is cart, which I've already done it. So cart ID, product name, price. Now these are the three attributes or columns which are going to use it. Here the same cart could contain many products, so we have a composite primary key here and the price for each product. That's all we are going to display just for demonstration purpose. So the name of the table is cart and the database name is, you can see here, NandaAcademies. So the database name is NandaAcademies and the table name is cart, in which I have all these columns. So now let me go to Visual Studio and let me say cart demo.python and type in this. So now import Anvil server, then import mysql connector, call this as mysql. Then I can define as usual my CallAnvil function, CallAnvil function, in which I have to connect to the server, that is anvil.server.connect. .connect and the key. So I'll just paste the key in a moment, and then anvil.server wait, anvil.server.wait forever. So wait forever function. So that completes our calling sequence. Next we have to define this function name, that is GetCartData. GetCartData. And here my cart ID. So I'm just sending this parameter to this function so that I can retrieve the products which are there in a particular cart. Okay, so now I'll just say, that is try catch block. And first the connection string, that is db connect mysql.connect. So I should give the local host, that is host name is localhost, and the database name is NandaAcademies. Then username and password. So the user is root and the password is admin. And we have use _pure equals true. So that completes my connection. So next we have the cursor, my cursor we will create using this db connect. Yeah, So where we have cursor method, it should come actually db_connect. Okay. Next we have this cart ID, it has come. So I just make that as a string because we are going to concatenate. So cart ID. Then we will prepare the SQL statement. So what is the SQL statement? Select. We have select cart ID, comma product name, comma price. Price. Select cart ID, product name, price from cart where cart ID equals whatever the parameter, that is this cart ID. So I'll just say okay. Right, so my SQL statement is ready, and now execute this. So mysql dot execute. Okay, so now import mysql.connector as mysql. Execute what? SQL statement. That is my SQL statement, and we have to fetch all. So let me say cartdata is equal to, in order to get all the data using my cursor, I have to fetch. So this is a function which gets me all the rows and columns and puts it in this dictionary called as CallAnvil. So it has a key value pair. Now we have to return this back to the calling program. So say return. So this is my first one, is it should match with these, select class. That means cart ID, product name and price. So first one is cart ID. It should match exactly, which is item of 0. The second one is product name. So use the same. So these names keys actually should match with the one which is there in the anvil form. That is data binding we have given. So we will cross check that. So this is item 1. Then the last one is price. So for this we have item 2. So 0, 1, 2. There are 3 totally. So we have this as a for loop for item in cart data. Okay. Now try catch we have to finish. So except exception as error. Now I can just print this error for even any exceptions. Then return error. This completes, and I have to call the anvil function so that my server will be running all the time, waiting for the user's request from the client. Okay, so now I have I should verify cart ID. So let me just see this data binding. So the first one should be cart ID. So I have given cart number. I'll just change it to cart ID. What is the second one? Product name. It is there. Actually, I have used prod name. So I'll just change this to prod name. Okay. Now the third one is price. I think that's correct. Price is correct. So these keys should match with these repeating panel items. That means each column. In other words, the cells. So here I'm going to display cart number, which has this name. Sorry, the first one is cart ID, then the product name and label 3. So I have already put, I think, some data in this cart so that for demonstration. Yeah. So cart 1 has some 2 items, cake and paste. Cart 2 has got only one soap. Cart 3 has got cream, knife and sugar. Okay. So there are 3, 4 and 5, nothing. So deliberately we have kept it like that. So let me just now, sorry, this one code page. So you can see get cart data, cart ID is the cart number which we are going to send as a parameter, and this function will return the entire result set object which has a table like rows and columns, which will in turn be displayed in this data grid repeating panel. And before you call this, actually you should get this. Okay, and you can actually use some checking here whether the user has really selected something or not. Fine. So those exceptions you can handle it easily. There's one more work which we need to do is the key, API key, which we need to paste it in my server program. So where is that? This one, publish app. Sorry, this uplink. Yeah, so this enable and copy this key and paste it here. Yeah, so now it should be able to, so we'll see whether it works. If it gives an error, then we can debug this easily. Right, so let me just execute this code. So okay, the server is running now and we will execute this application. Right, no problem so far. So I'll just select you can see here the drop down, so 2, and I'll press go. Yeah, there is no, still it is not running. I think it's when you get this kind of error, it is actually line 17. That means this function is not running there in the server side. So cart number is there, we are getting it, there is no problem. Now I'll execute again. Probably server did not get connected. So 2, no, there is some problem with the server, I think. Okay, we will just restart the server. So the key I think should be okay. Where is the key? Uplink. Right. Okay. Now let me just yeah. Okay, the error of course is that I have missed out this line, which is important, because without this line it will not be able to recognize that it is callable from the Anvil server part of it. So this line is the mistake which has been done. And one more mistake is this: it is not mysql, it's mycursor.execute, because you can see here my cursor actually should be there, because we have created the cursor with the DB connect of the database, and using which I have to execute my SQL query and it should fetch. So I think after correcting these two mistakes, now we will execute, because the key is correct. This is the the program server part of it with these two mistakes, and the client side of course there is no problem at all. So let me just run this for you, and you can see here that yeah, now it's getting. Now I'll just say cart number 2. Okay, cart number 2 has got only one item. I'll just show you. Cart number 2 has soap 42. So soap 42, and cart number 1 has 2 items. Okay, so we'll just take a look. Cake and paste. You can see here, yes. Cart number 3. Yeah, 3 items: cream, knife and sugar. So that is also correct. Cream, knife and sugar. And let me see what happens when I click on this. Cart number 4, nothing is there because it doesn't have any items. So it's now working fine with a simple demonstration of the drop down and the data grid. Make sure that these things, especially the beginners will get error. These keys should match with the binding, data binding, which we have done for the repeating panel, and number of items which are going to send from here to there to the client side should match, and make sure that the database and the Anvil server key are correct and running properly. So when you get some errors, of course you can easily debug. So you can also alter the width. For example, here, yeah, you can see here, you can alter either manually pushing like this, or you can change the width here also. Manually, you can, if you can design this entire data grid by yourself by giving the width in terms of pixels, that is also possible, because you will be the right person to decide what is the exact size. Because sometimes if the number of columns are more, pulling or pushing these vertical lines is not so easy. So I strongly suggest that you can use this width setting in the properties of this data grid. And also you can see that the lines between the rows are not there. So you can actually decorate this, or you can modify this data grid how it should look like using the CSS. That's what I showed you here. Assets. So you have the theme.css. So you can modify, add some of the decorating functions here, settings here, and give name for this. It's called a role name. So you can just click on this roles and come down, and you can say plus. That means give a new role name, and you can use it. I'll just explain this in my next video. I think this is enough for understanding that, because in future all the applications are going to use this. I don't need to explain this again, how this data grid is programmed. Thanks for watching. If the new visitors for my site have not subscribed, please do subscribe so that you will get the latest videos and notifications. Thanks once again.